Well, amid this growing expectation that a possible deal is imminent on the return of at least some of those hostages who've been held since October the 7th in Gaza, there's speculation, of course, about what has changed to enable any such deal and what any such deal might entail, as we heard there. And to try to answer some of these questions, I'm joined on the line now from London by Dr H A Hellyer, who is a Senior Associate Fellow in International Security Studies at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and also the Royal United Services Institute. Well, first of all, Dr Hellyer, thank you so much for joining us. If I might ask you to begin with, if as we're being led to believe then that this deal is imminent, what do you think has changed? What might have made it possible?
I suspect, and I'm saying here purely on the basis of speculation, in this regard, there isn't terribly much more than what your own reporters noted in the public domain, but I suspect that additional pressure was brought to bear by DC, continued contact with the Qataris, and keeping in mind that the hostages that are being released are supposed to be women and children. I don't think that that was something that was terribly difficult to swing in terms of Hamas and those holding the hostages. I suspect it gets more difficult here on in when they start talking about male soldiers. Women and children, I think, is going to be much easier.
Now, you've said in the past that you don't actually think Hamas intended to take so many hostages. Why do you think that? And if you're right, how do you think they are handling what happened, this large number of hostages?
So everything that we've seen, especially in the past sort of 2 or 3 weeks, people have dug up as much as they could about the actual day itself of October 7th. But everything we've seen indicates that Hamas planned for a particular type of operation where, yes, it would come into Israel, of course, where it would target various targets and then would return back to Gaza with a limited number of hostages, limited in comparison to what finally happened in the end. And I think that what you've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks is that they went in. The result from the Gaza IDF battalion was actually far less than what they thought they were going to have to encounter in terms of resistance, and they just kept on going. I don't think, by the way, this absolves them of any responsibility whatsoever. My point is that I don't think that they were prepared for the repercussions of what was going to happen next, because I don't think they prepared to go in that deep and to take that many hostages in the first place. But they did.
And so, speculation in this deal is that there might be a 5-day ceasefire. Israel's stated objectives were to get all of the hostages back and to destroy Hamas. So what will happen after this truce? Will it be the same? And what will the truce itself look like?
So I think that this is the unwritten or unspoken truth that people don't really want to talk about. So we've been speaking a lot over the past month or so now. It's been 6 weeks since October 7th, and we've been talking a great deal about how there's a division within Israeli society on what to prioritize: the ceasefire and getting the hostages, or the bombardment. And we cover this, or we discuss this, against the backdrop of overwhelming international support for a ceasefire, while on the one hand, and then on the other, the United States and a few European countries being opposed to one. It's not the same debate, okay? In the international community, it's a debate between continued bombing and ceasefire. In Israeli society, the debate is very different. It's about delaying bombing or continuing the bombing. Okay, so this division that you see unfolding right now, between the families of the hostages and so on, all of that disappears once the hostages are gone. I don't think that there's appetite within Israeli society to go into a ceasefire. I think it's purely about we want the hostages back, and then once the hostages are back, then the gloves can come off.
While we have you with us, there is so much speculation about what Gaza might look like when this war is over. What are your thoughts? What do you think might be the fate of Gaza after this?
I think it's a terrible situation. I think what you have in Gaza are 1.7 out of 2.2 million people who have been displaced, yet again, because many of them are refugees in the first place. I think 70% of people who live in Gaza are originally refugees anyway, and now they've been forcibly displaced from their homes. Infrastructure is in a shambles, health infrastructure, educational infrastructure. You have huge portions of particularly the north that are completely, they're unlivable. I think you have the spread of disease, which has been warned about by the United Nations, which is why we're seeing so many calls for medical aid to get through. You don't have a solution in terms of governance that everybody seems to agree upon. The United States is calling for some sort of Arab force and the Palestinian Authority to be returned. The Israelis are saying there's not going to be any Palestinian Authority that returns, that they will maintain, quote-unquote, overall security control over the Strip. And you also have Arab states saying we're not interested in coming in to clean up Israel's mess. So what you have, unfortunately, is this bizarre situation where the Israelis are going to continue being in occupation of the Gaza Strip. An occupation, I have to say, has never ended. From 1967, Israel is the occupying power in the Gaza Strip. This did not end in 2005 with the withdrawal of settlements or military troops on the ground, because they continued to maintain, and they definitely still maintain, effective control over the Strip. So they want to have, quote unquote, their cake and eat it too. They want to have effective control over the Strip, but without taking responsibility for what happens inside of it. And that makes for a very deleterious situation. It means that governance in Gaza, as it stands right now, will be completely impossible. And I'm not sure how people are going to get around that. You need to have stable institutions inside the Strip. You need to have medical infrastructure. You need to have educational infrastructure. You need to be, and anybody that comes in as part of any multinational, international peacekeeping force of any kind whatsoever is not going to do that if they know that the Israelis are going to be in effective control over the Strip and not give that up. It's either you're in or you're out. And right now, I just don't see any way around that unless the goalposts are shifted quite tremendously. And the United States is not moving in that direction at all. It talks a great deal about, the need for a two-state solution, but it hasn't talked about the need to remove the settlements from the West Bank, for example. And this makes it very difficult to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your thoughts on that. I should point out, of course, that the Israeli settlers did move out in 2005. Many people will remember pictures of being hauled out by soldiers after the Israeli government made that decision. Absolutely, of course. I realise you did point that out. And that Israel, I should point out, says that they do not intend to reoccupy as such Gaza. We will be following, of course, events on any hostage deal throughout the day.